But this is, these people are really, really something, AOC. Now listen to this. AOC, on that, you know that 12-year thing? You have the 12 years until the apocalypse audio of AOC, because she has been, and we started a countdown clock, and there are countdown clocks on Al Gore's amazing internet, peace be upon him, to the apocalypse, to the doom. Remember Al Gore 15 years ago told us we had 5 years until we were all flooded out and we were all going to die, and then he said we had a different timeline that was 10 years, and it was the Arctic ice was 5 years, and then other apocalyptic timelines had 10 years, and that was about 14 years ago. And AOC gave us this thing just a few months ago, right? And she was citing a UN report where she is telling us about how we have 12 years left. Remember this?
We have 12 years left to cut emissions by at least 50%, if not more.
She's eating.
And for everyone who wants to make a joke about that, you may laugh, but your grandkids will not.
That's right. You may laugh, but we're not having grandkids because Hollywood is boycotting sex because of the abortion law. But there she is. She's talking about 12 years. We got 12 years left, and there's no reversing it. And she said some people make a joke of it, and you might be laughing, but your grandchildren won't be, because and she's eating things that other people grew in the ground in Iowa. Took her by surprise too. She thought they came from the Whole Foods vegetables. The garbage disposal really freaked her out. And then she get the 12 years left, and we got 12, and some people make a joke of it. Well, you'll never guess what happened over the weekend. This is almost impossible to believe. The Daily Caller. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez rebuffs fact checkers. Says the world ending in 12 years was dry humor. Dry humor. Democratic New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez complained Sunday that GOP fact-checkers were taking her dry humor literally. Now, I mean, I've talked about this many times with the phonies at the Washington Post, Glenn, the fraud, Kessler. And here's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on her Twitter account. She wrote, "This is a technique of the GOP to take dry humor and sarcasm literally and fact-check it. Like, quote, world ending in 12 years, end quote, thing. You'd have to have the social intelligence of a sea sponge to think that it's literal." This is what she says. It wasn't literal. She was only kidding. It was dry humor. It was sarcasm. She writes, "But the GOP is basically Dwight from The Office, so who knows?" Dwight from The Office was dumb. He was unintelligent. But let's hear AOC again, because do you have more on AOC there? Oh, on the thing? Yeah, AOC.
The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? Yeah,
that's Now, when somebody fact-checked her ridiculous, insane, apocalyptic mental claim, then she has the temerity to come out and say this is a GOP technique where they take dry humor and sarcasm and fact-check it as though it's literal. Now, did it sound to you like she was being sarcastic? Because she has millions of people that follow her like lemming off the idiot cliff, and crashing to their metaphorical deaths, because it's based on a UN report. So is she now saying that the United Nations report was sarcastic? It was nothing but sarcasm? It was dry humor from the United Nations? I'd like to think we were getting something for our many millions of dollars from the United Nations, if only in the order of dry humor and sarcasm. But it turns out you can never mind that whole, it was just dry humor. And those sea sponge idiots from The Office in the grand old party, those Republicans are too dumb to recognize that it was just sarcasm and dry humor on the part of the genius who didn't know that plants grew in dirt and garbage disposals were installed in kitchen sinks. She's one of the leaders of the Democrat Party, and the news media loves her.
You may laugh, but your grandkids will not.
There's only one Chris Plante. The Chris Plante Show. Washington's Mall, WMAL, where Washington comes to talk.
Don't you know a joke when you hear one? That whole 12 years thing. Come on. Who took that seriously? Nobody. That's who. She is, as one of our listeners called in to talk to Victoria, said she's like Chauncey Gardner in being there. She wanders around Washington, D.C. We pretend that she's an oracle of some kind, that she's spewing wisdom, when in reality it's sophomoric silliness. I'm being as polite as I can possibly be. And then she declared that whole thing about 12 years was sarcasm and dry humor because a Republican dared to fact-check it.
We have 12 years. 12 years.
That's right. That's Bernie Sanders. And then, of course, Beto F. O'Rourke shortened the timeline to create a greater panic. He told us that we had only 10 years. It was only 10 years, not 12. But it was all sarcastic, so it turns out it doesn't matter. It was just humor, dry humor. Very dry. In fact, it was so incredibly dry that it blew away like dust. Remarkable stuff. But those responsible for the 2018 United Nations report on climate change, from which Ocasio-Cortez drew her 12 years left conclusion, did not consider their work to be an attempt at dry humor, the Daily Caller wrote. And during a live stream in April, Ocasio-Cortez mocked critics who blew off the claim as a joke, making it clear that she was serious when she said we have 12 years left to cut emissions by at least 50%. Now let's go to Bill Nye, the engineering guy. Bill Nye, he has a BA in engineering. That's the extent of his scientific background. And then he hosted a children's show. Bill Nye, in defense of the Green New Deal. You know, they're going to get rid of airplanes and things like that. No airplanes, no combustion engines. We'll be like North Koreans. It's going to be a pre-Columbian peasant society. We're going to have to go scrounging for food. It's going to be like Venezuela. But all our government officials will be in jail. So it'll be like Venezuela. All right, Bill Nye, and I've got to warn you, he curses here. He uses the F word and then the MF word because he's got a globe and he sets the globe on fire with lighter fluid to terrorize people because we're all going to die.
Here, I've got an experiment for you. Safety glasses on.
He's putting a safety glass.
By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees.
Could.
What I'm saying is the planet's on fire. There are a lot of things we could do to put
set the globe on fire.
Are any of them free?
They have a laugh track.
No, of course not. Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the up. You're not children anymore. I didn't mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12, but you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis. Got it? Safety glasses off, motherfucker.
There you go. That's Bill Nye, the children's show host. This is today's Democrat Party. He's always been a kook and a goof. That was his appeal. Now he's just a nut and a fruitcake and a freak show and does it grow the beep up and you beep, beep, and it's, it was Mother's Day just the other day. I think it's utterly inappropriate to use that term so shortly thereafter. That was done for what passes for a comedy show. It's another Democrat Party propaganda show on HBO. They have the party has many propaganda shows on HBO. Bill Maher and John Oliver, Who Cares What Happened Last Week, I think it's called.
As our city drowns, it will be baking under heat waves like what we've seen.
You're listening to The Chris Plante Show. Washington's Mall, WMAL, where Washington comes to talk.